All right, then welcome back to the wake up call. We're into the final hour right here, and we've got Sion joining us for second time this morning. Welcome back, Sion.
Thank
Hello.
you very much, Crystal. Crystal, are you hearing me? Hello.
Yes, please.
Let's make sure. All right, good.
Yeah,
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
I can hear
And
you.
I was listening to some of your comments. I was listening to some of the comments that you were reading out, and I smiled because some people would try to make anything political. Some, and I could hear that in the tone of somebody the responses, and some individuals. Apparently, parents have no responsibility. So when I hear someone said in the list of priorities, apparently your child's education is not a priority. Someone said in these hard economic times, as if parents have not always had to decide how to treat with their children. I mean, I was growing up with children who went to school barefoot with half a book and half a pencil and so forth. So the times are not, as a matter of fact, parents now are better able to deal with their children's education. And this government has made things like universal access to education, has broadened the social support systems for children who are needed to be given necessary support with transportation and so forth. Um, and also the majority of parents are preparing for school and will have their children prepared for school. So when I hear messages about the majority of parents are not this and not that, that's rubbish. The majority of parents are making preparations because the majority of parents know that the Ministry of Education is planning for the opening of school in a face-to-face environment come the 4th of October. If things are to change because of difficult circumstances, that will be communicated. And the majority of parents will understand if such a shift were to take place, but that's not the case. What is happening now is the government is preparing for the opening of school. We know the format that government is preparing. We are building schools. There are two schools built on the tarmac. There's a school built
Yeah.
um, out at Black Point. And yes, it is close to elections because we just had one about a year ago. But clearly, this is not in campaign mode, and those schools are being prepared
It's not
for the opening.
post-election talking about, yeah?
Hello, hello.
It's not post-elections they're talking about.
Well, it rubbishes the person's statement because elections are 4 years away. So I'm not sure what the point that individual is making. Again, those who seek to make things political, but we are moving steadfast, preparing schools for its reopening, and parents are preparing their children to be a part of that opening. And I hear you talk about all the challenges that may arise as we look at rising in cases and so forth. And again, we appeal to everyone to follow the protocols and as well use the most successful tool, the best tool currently available in the toolbox to fight COVID, which is vaccination. Adults, teachers, public servants, frontline workers, just about anybody
But
who hasn't yet gotten vaccinated should go out and get that vaccine.
but it's not the only tool, eh?
I said the best tool. I said follow all the
That's
protocols, and there is one.
I know. But what we've been hearing is a stress on vaccination. I just speaking on
Well,
behalf of some,
because it's the best
right?
one, because it is the best tool, and the world has shown it, and the world agrees that it is the best tool. So we stress on the best tool, but at the same time, we still do encourage individuals to follow all of the protocols: the distancing, the wearing of face masks, the hand sanitizing, and so forth. Individuals are continuing to do that.
All right. So some more responses coming in, right? Somebody want to ask you specifically. All right, based on something that you shared before. Ask Sion if the baby should not wear shoes. When you were talking about the expensive shoes that babies wear, right?
Again,
Sion,
I was very clear. I was very clear. And that person, I'm not sure what they're trying to do, but I was very clear. And I'm talking about buying a shoe for $80 for a child that's going to outgrow the shoe in 2 or 3 months because the shoe is. I'm saying I personally wouldn't do it because I do not consider it financial sense. If you want to buy 100 US shoes for your child, that's your choice, and those are your priorities. I'm not saying that you shouldn't wear shoes at all, and don't try to do that.
all right. Somebody else says, and Sion wanted to prove that this government can get things done no matter what time frame. And the best example he can remember is 20 years ago. Great job, Sion.
Again, that's a person that chooses to be selective. The schools that have been built are built now, and we've seen so many different examples. But hey, if that person wants to do that, go right ahead. You can do that and try to muddy up whatever the discussion we're having. But the discussion we're having is simply this:
Me?
school is going to be reopened
No?
next week, as per the no, no,
Mm-hmm.
not you. Schools are going
Okay,
to be
okay.
open as per the Ministry of Education, and we encourage all parents to get make all the preparations necessary.
All right. Okay, so before we get to some of the responses, right? Some of your suggestions, all right? I know the ministry would be deliberating on whether or the mode of teaching or education, right, going forward. Also considering transportation, moving the children or the children having to move to and from school and to and from their bubbles, deliberating on vaccinations and so on. But what are your Sion's suggestions for going back to school? Nothing to do with what is happening now, but what are your suggestions?
Well, based on the rising cases that we're having, I know that everyone has to be quite cautious, but I
Mm-hmm.
also look at what has happened over the last year and a half, and I've seen significant disruptions to the education system and to our children's education. And look, I talk to parents all the time, and parents are concerned with the level of disruption that their children are having. I,
Mm-hmm.
I I have studied online, and I know a number of individuals who are studying online as well. And I'm talking about through UE and other institutions. And since COVID, with the strict online for those individuals who had used to have some face to face and who used to have written exams and so forth, they complain incessantly about the difficulties and the adjustments that they've had to make since UE has changed its system and their different universities. So this challenge of having strictly online classes and universities and schools and systems having to be changed to accommodate the new paradigm are not just for St. Vincent. You look at the US, you look at the UK, all of these discussions continue to happen because the times are different and governments have a difficult task at trying to balance this, trying to ensure that children are given the best opportunity possible for an
Mm-hmm.
education while at the same time keeping them safe and keeping our society safe. And it's something
Mm-hmm.
that all stakeholders have a role to play in.
Mm-hmm.
Parents have their responsibility, the government has its responsibility, teachers have their responsibility, the van drivers, who are a significant stakeholder in this also
Yes.
to play their role as well. It has
Mm-hmm.
to be a collective effort, and we have a role in ensuring that our country remains safe as possible, healthy as possible, even as we grapple with the difficulties of COVID-19. Education
Mm-hmm.
disruption has been significant. I believe that children want to go back to face learning. I believe that
Mm-hmm.
parents are anxious to have their children back to face learning. And so we have to look at the best way of getting that done.
Okay. So if they were to go back to school, face to face learning, what do you think should be the best way to get that done?
If they want to go back to school, as far as I'm aware, school will be opening on Monday. So
I
there's
said
there's no right.
physically, face
Um,
physically in the classroom, the best way.
and
So
so
we're
just
considering
like when
challenges with transportation too, right?
just like when we had the this is not the first time since COVID that we are reopening. We had
Uh-huh.
we had closed school and we reopened school uh, um, before, and we had all the protocols that were there. We talked about the sanitizing stations that were putting in schools. They're still there. They weren't moved. We talked about these thermometers to check the temperature of children as they come in and so forth. So look, we have done this before. We did things that worked. As far as I'm aware, there was no outbreak in any of the schools when we went back to face-to-face learning after the first disruption. So
Mm-hmm.
I am positive that the ministry is going to put all of the protocols in place. There's no doubt about that in my mind. And it's just that all of the stakeholders need to play their part. So the bus drivers, the teachers, everybody would have a role to play, and we just need to focus on playing our role. Our parents have a role to play as well. Um, Speak to your children, give them the hand sanitizers to work with and so forth. all of these things have to be done. But I know that a lot of parents I spoke to, and I may well say the majority of parents are really anxious to have their children go back to face learning because they felt the disruption and they were not happy with it.
It's frustrating having a child at home. You have to go to work, and then you might have to get a babysitter, and then whenever school is online, your child doesn't sit still, and you have to have
Exactly,
somebody behind
exactly.
the time. It's very frustrating for a parent. For the past 2 years or so. All right.
And teachers, look, I've heard teachers who say, look, that children, even during the online classes, do not come to class because the parents send them out. So in the middle of a class, a parent comes to send a child to the shop and so forth. All of these things are happening. And for
Mhm.
all concerned, especially our children, as we look at building a future for this country, that has to be built on educating this generation, we have to look at the ways of getting the system back on track in as normal a fashion as possible.
All right. So somebody has a question for you, Sion. If school reopens physically, and I don't want my child to go, will online learning be available for parents? I'm not sure if you would be able to answer that, but I
Yes,
mean,
I can't answer that. I can't answer
do
that.
you think
I
that
can't
it
answer
should?
that.
Do you think that parents should have the option whether or not they want to send their children to school or online? Do you think that the ministry is in a position to do both, maybe at the same time?
Well, we have to look at where we are. The ministry has to look at where it is. But I believe that if the facility or if the process that we're using is face to face, then I expect that the children would show up to school using face to face learning.
Yeah, that's a tricky one there, man. Let's get some responses coming from Facebook as well. First thing this guy talk about is people taking things political. Check he
Yeah,
jersey.
that's the same guy. That's the same guy who talked about the government and thing. Oh, by the way, so it's a T-shirt that a friend of mine gave me. It's just a T-shirt, but of course, again, the guy who talks about election and political would notice the shirt I have on. Absolutely, absolutely. That is funny.
Yeah.
The first guy to bring in politics in election is the one to notice the fact that I have on a T-shirt with somebody wants to be. But that's fine. So I can't wear a T-shirt like this anymore because that's political. Hey, that X
um,
on your mic looks like a star, Crystal. I guess you mean political
no,
too. But
please.
anyway,
Listen,
let's move
listen the
on.
thing. Don't try that at all, Sion. For the listeners' benefit, all right? Sion is wearing a black T-shirt with a bunch of red and white stars. That's why that person made that comment there.
It's a blue
I don't
T-shirt
know.
actually. So it could be the
It's
American
blue.
flag, but it's a blue T-shirt.
It's
Yes, it's
blue.
actually blue. Yes,
All right, tomato. All right.
yes.
Somebody else says the heights of hypocritical. Not sure exactly what they're
Same
referring
person,
to
same
there.
person, same. That's the same person. That was the same person. Same person. Yeah.
Oh,
Let's
oh,
move on.
oh, did it? Okay, that must be a friend.
Same
Good
person.
morning,
Same
Crystal.
person.
Sion is boy. You know, we get what Sion is knocking and blowing his own tune. We can agree to disagree. It's easy for him to say, but I strongly disagree with him. All right, how the
I'm not
children?
sure. I'm not sure what that is talking about, but okay.
Yeah, that's why I just move on, man. I'm
Yeah,
not sure
yeah,
either.
simple.
Right?
Yeah.
Here's another thing that I see trending, right? And I want your opinion on this. The two schools that one is finished constructing and the other one is near completion, right? The two temporary
Yes,
schools
yes.
in Annisville on the tarmac there. A lot of persons on the Windward side have been asking what's going to happen in terms of that extra transportation cost for the children. What are parents supposed to do? One, two, who's supposed to pay for that extra transportation cost for folks coming from the leeward side? I reading what people saying, see, and don't look at me like that. Look, it says, leeward people not get no money. Who paying the extra money for the children on the leeward side to go to Annisville? All right.
Right. So I suspect parents whose children pass CSEC would be asking who's paying the extra money for children to go to college. Let's move on.
All right. That was
I mean,
a very
I
quick
mean,
response
I
there.
mean, I don't understand that at all. So I mean, you have a child. Would you prefer that there be no school? I mean, look, that's yeah. So let's move on, please.
Oh my goodness me. Oh my goodness. Okay.
I
So
want a serious
final
discussion
question.
with serious issues, and I'm willing to engage anybody.
Okay, except that one. except that
But that's
one.
not
Okay,
serious, Crystal. The post, I mean,
let's
people
read
from
it.
North Leeward whose children
Mm-hmm.
went to Trumbull Secondary or Peterbilt Secondary or Barley Secondary or Buckman Secondary or Camden Park Secondary would now have to leave from Barley or Buckman and so on and go to college. Should they ask who's paying the extra cost and so forth? I mean, we're having a serious discussion about the children's education, and if
Mm-hmm.
there's a need to it doesn't need to refurbish the school and work is being done, and so there's a temporary structure made at Annisville to accommodate
Mm-hmm.
the children from those schools. The question becomes who pays the extra money to go to school. I mean, and that's a serious discussion from a serious parent interested in the child's education. I'm sorry. I'm really
Mm-hmm. All
sorry.
right.
I can't
Okay.
accept that.
Okay. All right, Sion. All right, Sion. Okay, so I want to ask you, right? Final question on this topic here. The minister has said that it is not mandatory. They are advising parents to get their children vaccinated, right? Okay, before I finish asking that, let me take this call. Hello, good morning.
Very Crystal morning.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Good morning.
Sometimes I just wonder, some of the same parents, I know how may get some word for this. They
Go
buy a
on.
phone for 12, they buy a phone for 1200, two and something according to. They buy a costume from Oxygen, 15 minutes, 16 minutes from Mirage. The costume we have to rest down or throw it, kind of animal you see next day. So when you talk about this go too small and as fiance, it no sense you go buy shoes for 120 for a baby who can walk 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes man, you just can't understand people. But me, as I said already, it's the same father with the six talking here.
Oh, hey.
My youth
You.
tell them not ready. And when I Christian, I have a permanent job now.
Mm-hmm.
To tell you early.
And you still making it.
I don't put myself anyway to organize
No, but
my
that's what.
kids.
No, but look, I appreciate this caller because that's what
Yes,
parents
please.
do. The point about your children's education is
So,
a priority, and this is what
no,
parents have done all the years, and they will continue to do that. Those who want to keep their child home because the
Hold
child
on,
is to go to
brother.
grammar school and it would cost an additional dollar to go to Annisville, then that's their choice. That's that parent's choice to keep the child home because they're not paying the additional dollar.
yeah,
But I
Crystal,
believe most
someone,
parents won't
Mhm.
prepare the children.
someone will sacrifice
All right,
to
Sion. Let
buy
me get the
iPhone.
caller and then he can hang up. All right, go ahead.
Someone will sacrifice to buy iPhone, which we all know.
Mm-hmm.
Someone will even sacrifice to buy money or thing for buy costume. So one big kids education, you could sacrifice the same way.
All right.
You get?
Yes, please.
Right.
All right, thank you so much. All right. I mean, you could look at it as just $1, right, Sion, to go from Kingstown to Annisville. But that's $2 a day, right? Multiplied by five. I'm just telling you how some parents would max it out. That's $10 a week. That's $40, maybe $50 a month. Maybe some parents don't have the extra $50. Who
Maybe,
knows? Who knows? All right.
and as I said, Crystal, this government has expanded
Mm-hmm.
the social safety network to accommodate children who have those needs, so that if someone has issues with transportation, we've discussed a lot of times when the opposition, for example, talks about the size of the quote unquote poor relief, which is really public assistance. On that list are hundreds of students from hard areas who are given assistance with transportation. It's not just the elderly individuals who are given the assistance, the income assistance every month, but a lot of them are children who are given different types of assistance to get to school. So this government has done that and will continue to do that. So if there are children with that need with transportation, the government has assisted and will continue to assist. But
So
I
that's when.
believe that parents would continue to make that sacrifice to educate their children.
Okay. So on public assistance, right? It's a quick question. Yes or no? Do you know if there are people on there who don't deserve to be on it?
I can't say. I've never seen the public assistance list. I don't know. But
All
how do
right.
we again how do we determine deservingness? What does that mean?
Oh, it's supposed to be one person per household, right? But sometimes we have stories of multiple people in the same house on the same
No, okay.
list. Anyway,
Let's look at this,
let's
Crystal.
not go
If
off.
there's
Let's not go off on that.
if there's a no, but let's for example say there's an elderly individual in OEA, a
Hmm.
grandmother who's taking care of a young man whose mother may have gone to the States to look for a better life. So the young man lives with his grandmother. The grandmother is in her 60s and so forth, no work. So she gets a public assistance. But that young man comes to grammar school. So that $275 that the grandmother gets cannot be used to send that child to grammar school on a daily basis. That's to
Hmm.
assist the elderly grandmother with the home, which we know I mean is not going to make a whole, but it would assist. So you may well
Okay.
find that the grandson who is at grammar school or at college is also getting assistance with transportation. Somebody may run up and say, "Oh, there are two persons in that home," but what is the specific context?
Okay. So it's a case by case. So sometimes when we hear
It
these
is a case by
stories,
case
it's
basis.
Hmm. All righty then. All righty then. Let's get some more responses in right now. Somebody says the Minister of Finance has indicated that there are hard times ahead. Therefore, individuals need to economize as much as possible. Therefore, although we should prepare for our children's education, this is not normal times. Hence, we have to stretch our 2 cents as much as possible. So, if it is not necessary to purchase school supplies just yet, that money can be invested elsewhere. All right. Some more responses. Going to college and changing the venue from one place to another is something different that parents had made a choice to send their kids to college. So they knew it. All right.
Okay.
All right. Okay. 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 It's still not, they're still not going to sway you this morning.
Again, if parents feel strongly enough, then that's fine. That's fine. I'm not going to tell a parent how to feel.
Somebody says, what about the children coming from the windward side of the island for years back then, having to go to town or having to go to town and then go on the leeward side for school? They're getting an ease up now. All right. Let's see what else is there. So the parent can't send back something to help their child. Oh, for parents who went overseas. All right. Okay. So that was the last question. Oh, no, no, no. I didn't ask you. All right. So the minister has said, right? They're advising parents to, let me just get rid of that, right? So they're advising parents to allow the children to take the vaccine for those who are eligible, right? Do you think that is something that should be made mandatory before the children are allowed inside the classroom?
That is something that I believe the Ministry of Education, the government, in consultation with the health authorities, would look into. I mean, the truth is, we do already have mandatory vaccines for children going to school. Every child has to take all of their shots before they're allowed into school. So that's not
Mm-hmm.
anything new for children going to school. But that is not the
Mm-hmm.
case here. As we've seen the growing trend globally, different vaccines are now being approved for children under 12 and so forth, and they are being
Right.
allowed to take vaccines. You see, even in Antigua, excuse me, in our region, there's a move to have children vaccinated as well. For
Mm-hmm.
now, it's an encouragement, and the government continues to encourage not just children but also adults to take the vaccines. In other areas, it may be a requirement based on the level of risk that it involves. But for now,
Mm-hmm.
it's just an encouragement, and I would
Yeah.
also join
But I was
encouraging
asking for your
parents to do that.
I was asking for your personal opinion. Do you think that it should be made mandatory?
See, here's the thing, Crystal, right?
Yeah.
You and I
That's
could
correct.
talk my personal opinion. You and I could talk my personal opinion off air, but when I come on
Oh
air,
my goodness.
I don't take off hats. I don't take off hats.
You don't
I
switch. You
give
don't
my
switch.
personal opinion, and it's going to be, oh, the press secretary said XYZ this morning. They're not going to say, oh, when
Uh,
asked about his personal opinion, he said XYZ. You know what I mean? So,
uh,
but I tell you this though, in many
mhm,
instances, my personal opinion is not different than the conclusions drawn based on what the science says. All right, and so if the science says XYZ and the medical authorities, you see me, Crystal, here's me. This is where I am.
mhm,
I don't
mhm.
seek medical advice, and I don't take medical advice. I'm not going to take vaccination advice from somebody who can't fix my appendix when it's ruptured. You understand? So
All right.
so
No,
all of these
okay.
all of the new experts on vaccinations who are influencing people, that's them. But you see, when I have a pain in my back or in my chest, and I run to whether it's Dr. Duncan or Dr. Anderson or whom or Dr. Haki, know that there's an issue of vaccination, those are the ones I'm going to just as normal. No Facebook expert is going to come and tell me,
Why not?
oh,
There are a
Dr.
lot
Aki
of
and Dr.
Facebook
Duncan and
experts
so on
out
don't
there.
know what's
What's
going
wrong with
on.
you?
You understand?
What is wrong with
So
you? There are a lot of Facebook experts out there. Come on, man. Let's take some advice
oh,
from some of them now.
plenty. That's fine. Until they could deal with my appendix or my kidneys, I will stick to who I'm accustomed going to for medical advice. Aki, Duncan, Keyser, Anderson, those guys, I've been trusting them for years. I ain't going to stop now.
Okay. Lovely, lovely, lovely. I'm not gonna, I know you had some responses to the directors on the boards from earlier this morning. But we've been at it for about 25 minutes. So, I mean, it's up to you if you want to drop a quick comment on that.
Well, just to say
In
that is
terms
that
of,
is that is that is
mhm,
now I was saying that is geared at individuals who are appointed at the pleasure of the cabinet. So the cabinet has appointed individuals to various statutory corporations, statutory state-owned organizations, and so on, entities. Uh, Cabinet has, in their own deliberate judgment and at their pleasure, appointed individuals to serve on these boards. The cabinet is now saying to those individuals, your appointment is the continuation of that appointment now based hinges on the vaccination issue.
mhm.
And the cabinet has always had that right to remove or and replace individuals on boards. It's not a right. It's not an entitlement. The cabinet could appoint me on a board today, and in a month or 6 months or a year decide to remove him from the board, and there's no explanation required. It's as simple as that.
Would that extend some of these boards? Could you give us some examples?
Well, you have statutory, you have things like CWSA, VINLEC. Some of the bigs want to jump out. NIS, BOSBG. You have the Tourism Authority. You have Invest SBG. You have IFS, FSA. You have the NTRC. A long list of board. The tripartite committee on the economy. Um, the social welfare board. All of
Mm,
these entities, and there's a long list of them, are comprised of individuals appointed by the cabinet of ministers at their pleasure, to serve for a period, and the cabinet has now decided that the continuation of those individuals to serve on those boards hinges on a vaccination requirement.
mhm. Okay. So, can we expect that it will be extended to non-frontline staff at these entities?
Well, as of now, it doesn't affect staff at all. Board members are not staff members. These are
Mhm.
individuals who are part of the governance structure of the organization.
Right,
Um,
right.
it basically
Uh-huh.
entails very often maybe a meeting a month or something like that, and that's about it. They do not interact with the daily operating of the organization of the entity. So it doesn't extend to staff at all.
For now.
It doesn't extend to staff.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, Stian. Listen, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I just want to know
No,
if this is the start of persons at these entities, the staff members themselves. If this is the start of the government saying, "Listen, you guys, you're not frontline workers, but eventually you are going to have to take the job or leave the job."
I don't necessarily read into it as such. Staff members are
No.
staff members, but both, because you see, the thing about it is that you can institute different measures in your organization, as I said, testing and all those type of things, because those individuals come to work every day. A board member doesn't. A board member may come to a meeting with just the board, in a closed room once a month and so forth. So they may not necessarily be subjected to tests every week and so forth, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes,
So
please.
it's a lot more difficult in ensuring that board members follow protocols because they don't interact that frequently with the entity. Staff members have things put in place for them, and the organizations would change those things as become necessary. For now, you have the testing protocols, and you have the vaccination requirement for some frontline workers. This issue with the board, which is, as I said, part of the government structure of the entity, specific to just those members whose appointment are temporary and at the pleasure of the cabinet of ministers.
All right, so then. Okay, Sia. Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for joining us on the wake up
Thank
call
you for
this
having
morning.
me. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, man. I know it's always a pleasure, and you're free to come and holler at any time. All right. Enjoy the rest
And
of your.
I do take advantage of that open invitation. So thank you
Yes.
again so much.
Yeah, no problem. And next time, could you wear a shirt that has on no stars, or maybe
I
the
felt
star should be
American today, my red, white, and blue. But hey,
well next time,
yeah.
a different shirt, okay?
I wonder if I had worn a yellow shirt if people would have noticed it and said anything. Maybe not. I don't know.
Considering that your shirt looks black, I think
Uh,
yellow green. Okay,
it's a dark blue. It's a dark blue shirt.
it's
Yeah, it's a
dark
dark
blue.
blue
It
shirt.
looks black.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Have yourself a
All
good
right,
day.
sister.
Hey,
Have a good one.
it's
Thank
now.
you. All the best.
Big up yourself.
All right.
All right, thank you so much. All right, we're gonna end that one on Facebook. If you want to go